Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for inviting me to be here. Thank you, Dr. Al-Rawahi, Sheikh, whom I have met. Thank you. Jazakallah khair. Jazakum khair. I didn't have to find religion because my life was full of religion. When I was a Christian, I wanted to be a monk, rahib, and a monk's life is a life of search for God. A search that even though you find, you have never found completely, because God cannot be found. There is a story in Christian history. The history is there was a little boy by the sea with a little bucket, and he was taking the water of the sea and pouring it into the sand, bit by bit, bit by bit. So somebody saw him and he says, "What are you doing? Do you want to empty out the sea?" And then the boy looked at him and he says, "That's what you want to do with God. You think that you will finish knowing God, that you will exhaust God, that you will get to know God so through and through. But it's like me taking the water from the sea and thinking that I will finish." So there is a verse in the Quran. وَإِذْ قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ رَبِّ أَرِنِي كَيْفَ تُحْيِي الْمَوْتَى قال سبحانه وتعالى أو لم تؤمن قال إبراهيم بلى ولكن ليطمئن قلبي. And for me, that is my journey. My journey hasn't finished. It's an intellectual journey. I believe, but I want to understand. Not understand completely. I want to have peace of mind and of heart with what I believe. There shouldn't be a war inside of me because of religion. And that is why, so my becoming a Muslim is an intellectual journey. It's not a journey of, say, meeting nice people, because I still know a lot of Christians who are very nice. When I am among Christians, I feel that I am in my family. So when I go to India, I see nice Hindus. When I go to any country, I see lovely people. But for me, it was not about, I believe in that. I believe akhlaq is of the essence. So for me, becoming a Muslim was finding that inner peace. There was a time when I just couldn't pray anymore as a Christian. There wasn't that peace of mind anymore, because when I wanted to pray, I just couldn't say the words, because those were not the words in which I could believe anymore. So in Christian theology, there is a law, there is a rule that says in Latin, lex orandi, lex credendi. And it means something like the law of prayer, how we pray, is a sign of what we believe. And it was only when I became fully Muslim, a Muslim, that I could have that inner peace again, because my life had always been about God. I wanted to worship God. I didn't want anything in between. I didn't want mysteries. I didn't want miracles. I didn't want marvels. I didn't want strange things. I just wanted, as a human being, to kneel down in front of God and worship God without having to believe all those things that can only be explained by saying it's faith, it's faith, it's faith. So if I want to, what I wanted was absolute monotheism. I wanted tawheed wa tanzih. And And that's also how I came to the Ibadiyya as a system of thought. Yes, of course. I went from Argentina, I went to England, and in England I started thinking more and more and more. And then I realized that Christianity was a very nice philosophy, but I couldn't link it to the Bible anymore, which was my field of expertise. I couldn't link it. And at that moment, I started going to a mosque. It happened to be a Shia mosque, because their doors were open to anybody. In many mosques, if you're not a Muslim, you cannot go in. But they had an open door policy, and we could go, even during prayers, even during the salawat, we would sit in the back and look and observe. And I will forever remember those days as some of the most beautiful days, maybe. Even though I was not a Muslim yet, I felt more part of a family than now sometimes in some Muslim communities. And there were two things. The Imam, they were mostly from Uganda and Tanzania. They had left when there were problems in Africa, and they moved to England. And in the khutbahs, of course, there was parts from the Quran, there were parts from the Torah, parts from the Injil, parts from philosophy, parts from psychology, parts from literature, poetry. Everything was there. And so I really felt this man is intelligent. And he talks to me, like I am intelligent too. He's not talking to me like I'm a child who can't think or who is bad and I have to tell him. No, he was talking to me, to everybody, as an intelligent person talking to another intelligent person. And that was very important. I haven't had that very often after that, I must say. Sometimes I go to the mosque and I think, I'm going home hungry. And that was very, very important to me. And that was one thing. And after the prayers, they always had food. As soon as the prayers finished, like the plastic, like here in Oman, it was rolled out. Biryani came, jalebi came, many things. And so the whole experience was an experience of brotherhood, of family. And I think that was, if I had not met that community, I'm not Shia, but if I had not met them, I think I would have never become a Muslim. Even though I found my home, intellectual home among the Ibadis, but I owe a lot to that community. قبل عمان. بس الحمد لله هكذا هنا كمان. So those two things for me were very important. Tawhid, tanzih. Because tashbih is idolatry. I mean, we do it because we cannot do anything else. Our mind will always think like a human mind. We cannot think like God. We cannot have God ideas. So every religion, everything we do has tashbih. But then the religious effort is for tanzih. And then when I met the Ibadiyya, I found that. For example, in topics that are not very popular, but I found that, for instance, when people speak of the Quran as makhluk, for me that has to do with tanzih, it has to do with tawhid. And then also when people talk about ru'yat Allah, the same, it's like the child with the water. And also the third thing was the view of the al-imama. I had studied al-khilafa, and I could not see why we would make differences between people, distinctions between Muslims in terms of leadership, distinctions that would have nothing to do with taqwa or ilm. So those three things were very important for me. So as I said, my conversion, my change was very intellectual. It still is very intellectual. It has to do with ideas. Even if all Muslims in the world were very bad, even if everybody was in Al-Qaeda, even if every Muslim was like that, it wouldn't touch my faith in Tawheed, my effort for Tanzih. My faith is a faith in those principles, those keys to how look at life. I'm not saying that I'm a saint. I'm not a saint. Maybe I'm the last person to be one. But that doesn't change. I told my students, yes, like this is from a Belgian Christian theologian. He said something like this. إذا كنت أنا مخلوقا فهذا يعني أن لا يمكنني الفهم أو فهم ذاتي بدون أن أفكر في الخالق. الخالق هو الخالق والمخلوق go together, hand in hand. So مع الأمة، داخل الأمة، خارج الأمة، لا يختلف هذا. أنا مخلوق وحياتي ليس لي حياتي معنى كامل بلا الفهم، بلا أن أدرك، بدون أن أدرك هذه الحقيقة. أنا آتي من الخالق. أنا خلقت. And for me, I found that in the Ibadiyya very present as a reality in the thinking. And that's why I always say, even if Ibadis don't think that I am Ibadi, no problem. But I will still share these ideas. I will still uphold these principles, because we are not Muslims to be part of clubs. In that sense, clubs are not important. But in this family, I have thought this thinking alive. I studied the way I came to it. It was in the Sunnah, in Jama'ah, before, but through the influence of Ibn Hanbal and other people, this thinking went more to the background. Whereas in the Ibadiyya, it remained very present up to today. Going back to the message of the akhlaq from Sheikh, I noticed one thing that always spoke to me is that in general, Ibadi imams are very friendly. They deliver the khutbahs in a very soft and gentle manner. And maybe this is stupid. You would say, "Oh, that's not important." But to me, it's important. And also, if you see the Mufti on TV, I mean, I have only seen him on TV. He's always gentle. He's always soft. He's always well-mannered. He's always polite. Whereas if I go to other mosques, Muftis tend to shout a lot. I know it belongs to Al-Balagha, Al-Arabiyya, mumkin, but I'm not an Arab. So, also I went to visit Sheikh Hamoud, and for me it's very common to see that the Ibadi shuyukh, or the imams, al-a'imah, they're friendly, they smile, they enjoy their coffee, they enjoy their halwa. And for me, that being human, that humanity, that humanness is very important, because coming from the West, very often in the West, religion made people inhumane or made people very hard. So it's very nice to see people who really enjoy being human as part of their religion. So I think if you are going to go to study in the West, for example, many Omanis go, I think this is very important, that people see that you are a kind, friendly, gentle human being who loves life and Because what people see in the West sometimes is you see harsh Muslims in the streets or saying Allahu Akbar, and they see everything in black. Maybe they think of the revolution in Iran, or they think of so many things that for the West are very mukhif, you know. So suddenly to see Muslims who smile, who are kind, who are friendly, and also who, I don't find that the Ibadis, say when I was living in Egypt, one of my problems was they wanted to run my life. Yeah? They knew I was a Muslim, but I had been a Christian before, so they were all the time telling me, don't do that, because there is a hadith. Don't do that, there is another hadith. Sometimes, for instance, I had a shirt. I went to school, my teacher told me off because my shirt, I think, was red. So, if my hair was a bit long, they told me to cut it. I walked on the streets with a friend of mine who was a Christian. I went to school, my teacher said, هل هو صديقك? I said, yes, هو. هل هو مسلم? لا. He can't be your friend. So, I have never encountered that in Oman. And I think if you go to the West, that is very important. Kind of like, we should not play God. Allahu Alam is a wonderful expression. Because in the West, people will ask you, like they asked me, they said, Sergio, I drink alcohol and I'm not married. Will I go to hell? They asked me those things. And I said, I don't know, hell is not mine. I have no idea. I said, Allahu Alam. The only thing I can say is that in the revelation, those two things are frowned upon. But what God will do with you after your death, I cannot tell you. I don't know what He will do with me. And I don't drink alcohol. So I think that is very necessary right now in the West. I think if people see that, they will have a completely view of the Ummah. Because the problem is not Islam. The problem is the Ummah they have problem with. So I think that will be the best. Just be a nice human being. Show them you believe, and that your belief has made you even nicer. And that's the best thing we can do. You, me, all of us. That's the best we can do. And the rest is up to God. If they see that you are serious, they will respect you. Look, I go to my family, they are not Muslims, they're Christian, okay? And now because I get holidays in August, I'm always home with my family during Ramadan. My brothers look at me and they say, what are you doing? Yeah? But still, they will drive 100 kilometers to go and get halal food for me. They don't understand it, maybe they don't even like it, but they respect me. They will change everything in my family so that I can be happy. When I was in Egypt too, I've always lived with Christians because I studied, my best friend is a priest, Huwa Kahin. He always makes sure that my food was there before Fajr and that my food was there after Maghrib. So I think if they see that you mean it and you are happy and you are not telling them you are bad or this or that, people will respect you and they will make sure you can be a Muslim among them. Yeah. I had like 2 conversions. Conversion al-batin wa al-zahir. Why? Because I was already a Muslim in my ideas and I was praying in my room in secret. So and also because my job was, I was a teacher of religious education. Christian religious education. Yes. So that was my job. And because in Belgium we don't teach a lot of religion, it's more about human values. I had no problems teaching because it was about, for instance, poverty or respect life, solidarity. So there was nothing that I couldn't say because Belgian students don't like religion very much. So they teach human values. Yes. So, but after that there came a moment when it happened in Egypt because Egyptians never saw me as a Christian. Egyptian Christians always thought that I was a Muslim from the beginning. Also because when I became a Muslim, as I said in secret, I would go to the mosque sometimes, but it was a difficult time. It was, 9/11. So I used to go to the mosque and the whole khutbah was about Americans and Jews and mujtahideen and blah, 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 blah. And I didn't feel at home. Yes, even so, for instance, sometimes the imam could say, okay, if there is any Shia, please leave the mosque. Yes, yes. Before the prayers, go and pray somewhere else. So it wasn't home. So I said, okay, I'll stay where I. And secondly, I was afraid because I like thinking, and I thought if I become publicly a Muslim, I will not be able to think anymore, because the Muslims around me were very not fanatic, but they don't like talking about philosophy or hypothesis. So I thought that is too much for me. I cannot not be free to think. And then suddenly everything changed, because even though people think that after 9/11 the West would be very anti-Muslim, actually it's only then that Western people started to be really interested in Islam. What is Islam? What do Muslims want? And a lot of things started changing. Actually, a lot of good things happened in society. And then I thought, okay, this is my time. I've been working for, say, Christian schools. I said, now I want to work with Muslims. Yes. And then they asked me to set up a program for religious teachers, for teachers of the Islamic faith in primary and secondary education. Because in Belgium, the government doesn't have a religion, but in Belgium, the government pays the imams and pays Islamic religious education in every school. Muslims, actually, every student in Belgium has to study something like this, like religion, and the government pays for it. So I organized the program to teach those teachers. My family was never happy that I was going to be a priest, because priests don't get married. So they were not happy. But that means also that I never thought that I would get married. It was never, my DNA was not to be married. So it's only here when I came to Oman that I really felt the need to get married. And inshallah, I'll get married soon, inshallah.
You will invite all of us to...
Inshallah.
Yes.
Yes, I have cousins who are Lebanese, Christian Lebanese. So sometimes they don't trust the Muslim thing, because of when the Lebanese people left Lebanon, they went to Argentina. It was because of war and because many things. So they have that past. But my family has seen that I am the same one. I mean, I am their brother, I am their son.
Before and after, you are Sergeo, the same.
I'm Sergio, and they accept that. They're happy. Every time I go, I try to teach them something or bring something small and leave it there in the house. When I was teaching those students who were going to be teachers, we had to study basic things of Aqidah. So I usually used to give them passages from books, Aqidah books, but I never gave them the name, kind of like, okay, this is the Sunni Aqidah, this is the Shia Aqidah. No, I just gave them the texts. We read the text, we studied the texts, and I used to ask them, which one do you think is the most logical one? And usually, they would say, this one, the Ibadi one. And then after that, I said, okay, do you know which one that is? I said, that is the Ibadi Aqidah. And they were kind of shocked, because, most of them were Sunni. And they cannot stop being Sunni because the whole family is Sunni. But it was a very nice experience for them to kind of like concentrate on the ideas without branding them, and pay attention to the strength of the argument, not where it comes from.
We thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.
For joining us and accepting our invitation. and inshallah ta'ala we hope it will be again and again and again. في الختام إن شاء الله تعالى نشكر الدكتور الأخ سيد سليم على ما تفضل به وشاركنا من تجربته ورحلته للإسلام.